Welcome to the deep dive. I was recently walking through this really fascinating part of Minneapolis, and today, well, we're going to explore that area together.
Yeah, think of it as a guided tour, maybe, focusing on the stories behind places like the Stone Arch Bridge, the Guthrie Theater.
Right, and the Mill City Museum, the Ruins Park next to it. We really want to unpack the history, the architecture, just what makes these spots tick.
Definitely. And, the whole time, remember the Mississippi River's right there. It's like the backdrop and the power source for so much of Minneapolis' story.
Okay, so let's start our walk, mentally at least, at the Stone Arch Bridge. It's such a landmark on the riverfront now. You see everyone walking, taking photos.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that wasn't its first job, was it?
No, not at all. Originally, it was all about trains. Think a railway bridge. It connected to the Milwaukee Depot. Super important for moving goods, people.
Trains. Wow, it's actually hard to picture that now, standing there.
I know, right? The whole vibe is different. But yeah, for decades, that clatter of trains, that would have been the sound you heard.
I think I read somewhere it was running trains until, what, 1965?
That's right, yeah. Operational until 65.
Which feels surprisingly recent, in a way.
It does, doesn't it? And then, not long after, by 1971, train traffic just stopped completely.
So why the change? Just less need for rail?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It mirrors the bigger shifts happening everywhere. Cars were taking over, air travel was growing, railways weren't quite the king anymore for passengers or freight.
Makes sense.
So the bridge itself was fine, structurally sound, but its main purpose just wasn't as critical.
But instead of just letting it sit there, they repurposed it. I heard it was even a car bridge for a while.
It was, briefly. Which is even weirder to imagine now with all the pedestrians.
Totally. But then, thankfully, 1994, it became the pedestrian bridge we know today, which I think was a really smart move for the city.
Oh, absolutely. Brilliant urban adaptation. And here's a key thing. It's the only Stone Arch Bridge across the entire Mississippi River.
The only one? Really?
The only one, full stop. The whole length of the river. Gives you a sense of the engineering challenge back then.
Wow. That's quite a claim to fame. And it's still very much alive, isn't it? Like, they have that festival every year.
Yep. The Stone Arch Bridge Festival each June. It keeps it relevant, a place for the community.
It's a great example of reusing history.
Exactly. But there's another layer, too. Its connection to early power generation.
Power generation. How does a train bridge connect to that?
Well, geographically. Right near the bridge on what used to be called Hennepin Island, the nation's third hydroelectric plant opened up. Way back in 1882.
The third in the whole country.
Yeah, and that was, well, revolutionary for Minneapolis. Before that, you pretty much had to build your factory right on the river to get power.
Okay, right, direct water power.
Exactly. But this plant, being so close to where the bridge is, it meant they could send electricity away from the river through cables.
Yeah.
It allowed the city to spread out, to industrialize differently.
That's fascinating. So the bridge was basically right next door to this huge leap in technology.
Pretty much neighbors, yeah. It shows how these big infrastructure projects are often linked.
And the fact it's a Stone Arch Bridge
Yeah.
building, that must have been quite something.
Oh, definitely.
Right?
Back in the 1880s, a major project. See, the arch shape is key. It works using compression. All the stones push against each other.
Okay.
But to build it, you need a temporary support, like a wooden skeleton underneath. It's called formwork or cinnering.
Ah, like a mold to hold the stones.
Exactly that. You carefully place each stone on this wooden frame. They all lean in. Then comes the most important part, the keystone.
One of the very top.
Right at the apex. Once that's in, it locks the whole arch together, becomes self-supporting, and then you can take the wood away. Ingenious, really. It's ancient technology.
That really helps visualize it. And I think you mentioned there's a walking map for this area.
Yeah, I saw a note about a free Minneapolis Riverfront walking tour map Mill District. Sounds like it includes the bridge and probably lots more. Could be handy if you're exploring yourself.
Good tip. Okay, so if we keep walking west from the bridge, the next big thing that grabs your eye is the Guthrie Theater.
Yes, the Guthrie. You can't miss it. Even if you're not going to a play, the building itself is quite a statement. Modern architecture, for sure.
Definitely a statement. It was designed by Jean Nouvel, right? The French architect.
That's him, Jean Nouvel. He's a big name internationally, known for designs that are, well, often pretty innovative, sometimes a bit daring.
Daring seems right for the Guthrie. What else is he known for? Just to get a feel for his style.
Well, probably his big breakthrough was the Arab World Institute in Paris back in the late 80s.
Okay.
The really cool thing there is the facade. It has these like mechanical irises, geometric patterns that open and close based on sunlight. Sort of high-tech meets traditional design.
Whoa, okay. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. And more recently, he worked on the Yves Saint Laurent Museum in Marrakech. Again, it's very modern, but also seems to really respond to the local, the Moroccan context.
So he thinks about the setting, the culture.
Very much so. And you see that experimental streak in the Guthrie, too. Even without moving parts like the Paris building, he likes to play with light, materials, expectations.
Like that long walkway part that sticks out, the endless bridge.
Exactly, that big cantilevered bit reaching towards the river. It creates those dramatic views, but it's also just a bold architectural move. It's about the experience inside and out.
Yeah, it really draws you in. Okay, so moving just a bit further, we hit the Mill City Museum. This place feels really rooted in the city's past.
Absolutely. It's built right into and around the ruins of the old Washburn Mill. That mill was, huge. This whole area was basically the flour milling capital of the world for a while.
Hard to imagine that now.
It is. The museum really tells that story, including, the decline of that industry in the mid-1900s.
And using the actual ruins as part of the museum is incredibly effective, I think. It connects directly to that idea of, what's it called, heritage tourism.
Yeah, heritage tourism. It's about preserving and interpreting historical sites. So instead of just knocking down the old derelict mills,
Right.
they saw the value in keeping those ruins, in using them to tell the story. It acknowledges that these, industrial leftovers aren't just junk. They're packed with history, with the stories of the people who worked there.
It makes the history feel much more tangible. I saw some online comments about the museum before my walk. People mentioned a unique elevator ride.
Ah, yes, the flower tower. It's clever. They use the old structure. As you go up, it's not just an elevator, it's like a show. Historical footage, sounds, narration telling the story of the mill.
Oh, that sounds way better than music.
Definitely more engaging.
People also mentioned Betty Crocker exhibits, which seems slightly random for a flour mill museum at first glance.
But you gotta remember, General Mills came out of the milling companies here, like the Washington Crossing Company.
Ah, okay, the connection.
Right. So Betty Crocker is part of that corporate history, that evolution from raw milling to branded food products. It shows the lasting impact.
Makes sense. And the views from the top are supposed to be good too.
Apparently so. An observation deck giving you that big picture of the riverfront, the bridge, the ruins. And quick tip, might be worth checking the Minnesota Historical Society website. They run the museum, and sometimes memberships get you free entry there and other places.
Good to know if you're planning a few visits. Okay, last stop on our virtual walk, Mill City Ruins Park, right next door.
Yeah, it complements the museum perfectly. It's this open air space where you can just wander among the actual stone foundations and walls of the destroyed mills.
It really gives you a sense of the scale, doesn't it?
It really does. Lets you reflect on what was here. And practically speaking, it's pretty accessible. Mostly flat paths.
I noticed that, though maybe some cobblestones closer to the ruins.
Yeah, a bit of uneven ground, some cobblestone or gravel right by the ruins themselves. So, decent walking shoes are a good idea.
Always good advice. It's an interesting mix there, the stark ruins, but also landscaping, public art.
Yeah, history and modern park design kind of blending together.
Yeah.
And speaking of history, tucked away nearby is the Art Godfrey House.
Oh, I didn't notice that specifically. What's its story?
Well, get this. It was built in 1849. It's the oldest surviving frame house in Minneapolis.
1849? Wow, that's old for Minneapolis.
Right. Predates most of the giant mills. And Art Godfrey himself, he was a key early figure, a millwright. He helped build the very first dam and sawmills using the power from St. Anthony Falls.
So his house connects back to the very beginning of harnessing the river here.
Exactly, a direct link. And speaking of the falls and that early power, if you look across the river, there's Water Power Park on Hennepin Island.
Right, I saw that pier sticking out.
Yeah, the park lets you get really close to St. Anthony Falls, feel the spray, see the power. Hennepin Island itself, that's where those very first sawmills were built in the mid-1800s. For decades, that was the power source.
Just direct water wheels, basically.
Pretty much. Direct power from the river. And interestingly, XL Energy, who manages the hydropower there now, they opened up part of the island as that park in 2004. Part of their lease agreement, making history accessible.
So this whole walk, it really layers things together, doesn't it? The engineering of the bridge, Nouvel's architecture at the Guthrie, the industrial rise and fall at Mill City, the very beginnings with Godfrey and the falls.
It's all woven together, and hopefully this deep dive gives everyone listening a better feel for this really rich area of Minneapolis. Maybe inspires them to go see it themselves.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe a final thought to leave folks with. Think about how cities constantly change, how they reuse pieces of their past. This riverfront is such a clear example. What layers of history might be hiding in plain sight where you live, connecting things you hadn't thought about before?
Good question. Lots to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.